Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Faith-Based Advisory Boards of Prince George's County Economic Development Subcommittee Town Hall regarding resources after the pandemic. I'm Reverend Dr. Sharon Anderson, and I am blessed to be the co-chair of the Faith-Based Advisory Board under the leadership of our overseer, Pastor Charles McNeil, and under the leadership of our chair, Lady Nakia Wright. With me today is one of my stellar team members, Pastor Albert Chapman, who is a vital part of the Economic Development Subcommittee. And unfortunately, our second team member, Pastor Rudolph Brooks, wasn't able to be here with us today. Please keep him in your prayers. But we have been working for you. We took a brief hiatus after the end of the year and after Christmas to really begin to pray and focus on what we feel is necessary for the churches to know and for pastors to know and faith-based leaders to know about how to pivot after this pandemic. And if you followed us last year, you know that we bought vital resources for you that really went to the heart of what you needed to do to prepare for such a time as this, what to do during the pandemic. But when we prayed about how to bring you relevant information in 2021, we felt that it was important to now start to talk about what to do after the pandemic. And given that this is our first town hall and our first meeting since 2021 started, we thought talking about resources and vital resources for you and your congregation was important. So thank you for joining in. Make sure that you like, make sure that you share. And if you can't watch the entire program, make sure that you look at our YouTube channel or follow us on our Facebook channel at FPGFBAB, at PGFBAB, and you can watch all of this live and in color and get all the information that you need. So we are blessed to have some great guests with us today, and I'm really thankful for their participation. And we're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to talk about resources that the county executive has, and shout out to our awesome county executive, Angela Also Brooks, who has been a leader and a beacon of light throughout this pandemic. So we give her all of the honor and all of the praise that she deserves in leading us through such a trying time. But she counted it not robbery for us to have some very knowledgeable and important people on this line to talk about some very important resources that you as pastors need to know and you as your church members need to know. So we're going to talk about the resources in the Prince George's County government that revolve around rental assistance, as well as the eviction moratorium status and the foreclosure moratorium status. I've received myself as an executive pastor hundreds of calls, emails about when is this expiring. There are people that are fearful that they are going to lose their home, whether they're renting or whether they're buying, because of the potential moratorium expiration. So we're going to talk about where we stand with that, and then what resources Prince George's County has that's available and remain available from the federal government and through the state to our county, so that we can continue to survive and thrive throughout this pivot in this new norm that we're experiencing. We're also going to talk about the Payroll Protection Act program, what the status of that is, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan program, what the status of that is. And then we're going to end with a discussion about church mortgages. We know that some churches, because we've been closed, have dealt with issues with respect to their mortgages, forbearances, deferments. And so we are going to have an expert that will come in and tell us a little bit about how you can handle that status if you are struggling with your church mortgage. So we're going to talk about assistance for your members, we're going to talk about assistance for small businesses, and we're going to talk about direct assistance for churches. So before I introduce our guest, Pastor Chapman, anything you want to add about why we're here and our role and our goal as the Economic Development Subcommittee?
Wow, thank you, Dr. Anderson, and I'm so honored to be a part of this committee. What I really appreciate, I guess, the most about this committee is the importance and our mission of getting information out into people's hands, because I believe information is power. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a pen. I hope you have a piece of paper together, because we're going to bring some great information to you today. Some great information, as Dr. Anderson said, about foreclosures and so forth. But I want to just encourage you, because what happens a lot of times is people really become depressed. They become even sick, etc., because they lack information as to how to move forward after a disaster or an emergency. And so I'm so grateful today that our chairperson, Dr. Anderson, has chosen this subject, because I believe this is really going to impact us and help us as a whole to go forward. So we thank you, and we want to welcome our guests. I believe I'm supposed to turn it over to Ms. Yeoman. Welcome, Ms. Yeoman.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate being here today with you to share information about what Prince George's County is doing to assist its residents in combating the COVID-19 pandemic and what we are offering in light of what's going on, especially as it relates to rental assistance and utility assistance. So should I just begin now?
Yes, yes. And just so everyone knows, again, we have with us Ms. Alexis Yeoman, and Ms. Yeoman is the Public Information and Legislative Affairs Specialist or Liaison for Prince George's County. And then we have Ms. Tarika Williams, and she is the Quality Control Officer, and she's the one who reviews the efficacy of the applications. And so we have the people that we need to know for really understanding how to access this money. And one thing I do want to say before we begin is that what the pandemic did, and the reason why this is so important, is that there were really about 4 pandemics going on in 2020, not just one. We know about the COVID infection, but we had economic turndown and issues with the economy as a result of it. And I took some notes for myself. We had racial injustice issues that we were experiencing as African Americans during this pandemic and as a result of the pandemic. And then we had also mental health issues dealing with the impact of COVID, dealing with quarantine, dealing with homeschooling, dealing with socialization or lack thereof of our children. And so oftentimes it is not that Prince George's County or any government doesn't have the resources. Sometimes it's just that the information is not getting out. And if you're dealing with all of these things, you might not know how to navigate the system to access it. And so pastors, faith-based leaders, or anyone that's watching this, the reason why we're doing this is we want to give you information, but we brought 2 women on this line so that they could give you specifics about how to gain access. Because oftentimes for us, for our community, it's not about the lack of resource, it's about the lack of access. And impediments can be lack of education, inability to read, inability to have the technological resources, or just being so overwhelmed that I can't get through the application process. And so Ms. Yeoman and Ms. Williams have graced us today to begin to tell us not just what is available and what the status is as it relates to the rental assistance program and the moratoriums, but then how to access it specifically. And then if you need technical assistance, how to get that support. So Ms. Yeoman, we'll turn it over to you. And thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to share this information with all of your constituents on the phone. The Prince George's County Department of Housing and Community Development is now launching its 3rd rental assistance program. We did 2 last year. The first one was geared toward tenants. The second one was geared toward landlords. The third one, which is the one we are servicing right now, is geared toward landlords and tenants. So each time we launched one of these programs, we learned a little something along the way. The federal government has never faced a pandemic of this size in recent history. And so the federal government is learning too. And as they distribute funds, they put a lot of caveats on what they are distributing. And once we have to implement it, we see what works and doesn't work. So by now we're at the third phase of distributing funds, and we have learned a lot. And so as the federal government in the last couple of months of what's working for people. And so what I wanted to do, if I may, is to share our website where tenants and landlords have to go in order to apply for the program. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yes.
All right.
Is it working?
I'm not the most technologically adept person, but I'm gonna try to do this.
While
Let's
you're
see.
doing that, so important to
There it is.
hear what she was saying, that this status, the status of this round is available for landlords and tenants.
Yes.
And we know that even in some of our discussions, the focus has always been on tenants. And we understand that if you're residing in a rental unit, but there are homeowners that are renting out their homes who are suffering just as much as tenants because they can't pay their mortgages because the tenants can't pay the rent.
Correct.
And so we are thankful for the leadership of our administration to make this available for both tenants and landlords, because again, oftentimes the tenants, just because of everything that's going on, might not be able to gain access. So this is another way to make sure that everybody's economic interest is covered.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. So this is the Prince George's County Department of Housing and Community Development's webpage. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. In the left-hand corner, this column, there is the emergency rental assistance. So you just click on that and it goes right to the page.
Awesome.
Okay. So it'll tell you that it's open to both tenants and landlords. The last program we had was first come, first serve until the money ran out. That is not the case this time.
Awesome.
So we had $10 million back in 2020 to disperse, but we had $14 million in applications. So clearly, not everyone was able to be served. This time around, we have over $25 million to disperse. So we are hopeful we will be able to assist most people. You do have to have a COVID-related emergency as to why your income dropped. You do have to meet income eligibility requirements. And all of that is right here on the page, who can apply and what it covers. This time, our program will go back if the landlord applies, the landlord can go back as far as 12 months. That's a whole year. And some people haven't paid their rent in a whole year because they have not been able to. So a landlord can go back and capture a whole year's worth of rent. If the tenant applies, they could only go back 6 months, but they can also apply for utility assistance as well. So the tenant needs to read through this to make sure that they select the way to go, so to speak, whether they go through their landlord and the landlord applies on behalf of the tenant, or if the tenant wants to apply directly. The tenant may only need 3 months of back rent. So in that case, the tenant could apply, and they may need their water bill paid, the electric bill paid. All of that they can apply for. And
is there a maximum amount, Ms. Yeoman, that they can apply for? Or is
no,
it just
the first two programs had a cap, but this time it doesn't have a cap. So again, the federal government is easing up a little bit on some of the restrictions that they put on the first two times. Like I said before, they're learning also, and a lot of restrictions they had the first time, people just couldn't meet. The bar was just too high. And so it didn't help as many people as the federal government wanted it to help. So this time the cap is off. So you can go back as far as 12 months if you're a landlord, as far as 6 months if you're a tenant.
Awesome.
If you are technically challenged with the internet or with computers, or you're just not computer savvy, because all of this is, you have to apply online. And if you've never done that before, if you've never had to seek assistance from the county government, because a lot of people have never had to do this and they find themselves now having to go to the government for help. We have community partners that we have Tarika so wonderfully has trained in how to apply for the program, particularly if you're a tenant. And our community partners are fluent in both English and Spanish. And I'm scrolling up so you can see we have 7 different community partners around the county. 2 in District 2, I think there's 2 in District 3, UCAP in District 6, Mission of Love in District 7, and Hope in District 8. And they are actually allowing people to come into their office, even in light of COVID. But you have to make an appointment. And that's one of the reasons why you have to make an appointment, because they are allowing people to come inside their office space. And they will sit with you and they will go step by step by step until it is submitted.
Awesome.
And so there's help available.
That's phenomenal.
Yes, I wanted to point that out. And then on our website, if they could review the eligibility for tenants, the qualifications for landlords, it's all here. And then we have documentation that must be submitted in order to receive funding. And this is required by the federal government. We cannot make any exceptions to this. So it's, don't shoot the messenger, but we're spending taxpayers' dollars, so it has to be accounted for. And so there is a list here on the website that has what the landlords need to submit based on their application, or if the tenant is applying directly, what the tenant has to submit based on their application. And it goes down the list. And it may look like a lot right now, but it's not really that much. It's just.
And then Tarika is going to walk us through that, right, Tarika? Tell us what's a good package and what some of the pitfalls are, some of the things that you see that are common mistakes that prevent funding. So, Ms. Yeoman, before we turn it over to Tarika to get more specific, I know people are concerned about the eviction and the foreclosure moratoriums. Do you have any updates for us as to whether or not that's been extended?
Yes. At the beginning of the year, it looks as if the governor is extending the state of emergency from a month-to-month basis. So when I looked on his website, every month, January, February, and just most recently, March 18th, which was, I think, last Thursday, he extended it again. And I think he's going by what the COVID-19 numbers look like. So if they start to spiral down and more people are being vaccinated, he will probably lift it at some point. When the state of emergency is lifted from the state of Maryland, then the moratorium will also be lifted. But right now,
I hope everybody hears that. So the reason why we felt that this was important to bring you as the Economic Development Subcommittee's first meeting is we know that a number of individuals have been suffering in this area, and they're concerned about whether or not they will be evicted. And they're still trying to figure out whether they're staying at home and schooling their children or going back to work and might have lost their job as a result of having to stay at home. So at this moment, because the state of emergency has been extended, the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures have been extended. Once that state of emergency lifts, because the information is codified in the state of emergency, or the moratorium rather is codified in the state of emergency, then the landlords will begin to be able to file for evictions.
Right.
again. So that's really important to know.
And typically the courts will take the oldest to the most current. So if you received an eviction notice, really shouldn't be receiving an eviction notice during this time. But if you receive one once the moratorium is lifted, the courts will be reaching back to satisfy those cases that have been filed a long time ago. So it's not like it's going to happen to you in 2 weeks, because it's not.
Exactly.
That's the
Exactly.
reality.
And
And
you
then
should.
Mhm.
Go ahead, please.
At the bottom of the web page is the instructions for the landlords and tenants, the frequently asked questions for the landlords and tenants, and then where you apply is right there where it says apply now, if you can see that. And so hopefully, and if you have any number of questions, any number of these nonprofit organizations here can assist you with your application.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
so
And Pastor Chapman, actually, could you leave that up because Tarika might
okay, sure.
go down and show you something. But Pastor Chapman, very quickly, since you work with or on the board of UCAP, did you want to give any information about what UCAP is doing in this area?
No, I think she Ms. Yeoman covered it very well. But one thought that I did want to, a quick question that did come to us real quick was, to apply for this, does one have to be a citizen of Prince George's County, citizen of
Yes.
Maryland, or a U.S. citizen? And so, if you don't mind, I know there's some that may be listening that are Hispanic or concerned about that. Could you address that also?
You want to take it, Tarika, or you want me
I
to
can take it. So in order to be eligible, you have to be a Prince George's County citizen, but you do not necessarily have to be a U.S. citizen. We do not verify Social Security numbers, but we do, you are required to provide tax returns. And we are aware that individuals who are not U.S. citizens can apply, can file for their taxes. So we do not verify Social Security numbers. It's not required to be provided.
Amen. Okay, thank you.
For that. Thank you for that. So we'll turn it over to you, Ms. Williams, and the guru of the
I guess I could start with, we do encourage individuals to partner with their landlord, and provide all required information to their landlord. It's a much easier application. It requires less documentation. Also, you'll be eligible for 12 months. If you have utilities that you would like to apply for, your landlord can still apply for your rental arrearages, and then you can apply in the tenant-based application for your utilities only. So in general, for a landlord application, the landlord has to provide for their property a W-9, an ACH form, their rental license. They do have to have a valid rental license in Prince George's County or one of the municipalities within Prince George's County, sorry. And also W-9, I think that's it for, and the deed, I'm sorry, the deed for the property for the landlord. And then for the tenant, we have to be able to verify, one, that they have suffered a COVID hardship. In general, they just have to fill out a attestation form and they attest that they have suffered. It gives you about 8 or 9 different scenarios that you've suffered due to COVID-19. And then you also have to provide your 2020 calendar year income or 3 months of your 2021 current income in order for us to determine that you meet the eligibility requirements based on income.
And what is the income threshold? What is the?
So it's at 80, we can go up to 80% of the area median income for Prince George's County, which is, I can pull it, give me 1 second. And it'll vary based on the household composition. So for, I can give you an example. instance, for a household size of 4, the household can make no more than $79,600.
Thank you.
And those are posted online as well, so an applicant is aware of where they would fit when applying. And then we would also have to obtain the rent ledgers for each tenant, and then a current lease on file for each tenant. And generally, that's the gist of a landlord application. So it's much simpler, requires less documentation. For a tenant application, it's a little more cumbersome, just because it's being funneled through a different source of funding. We receive CDBG state COVID funding to assist tenant applications. So the state requires a little more documentation than the federal government does. So for a tenant application, you would need the valid photo identification, a copy of the lease, and the names on the lease must match the applicant's names, your most recent tax return, documentation from your former employer stating the loss of a job and or hours due to COVID-19, copy of your last pay stub if you lost employment for anyone in the household ages 18 or over that are not full-time college students, copies of the 2 most recent months of your checking and or savings accounts for anyone in the household ages 18 or over that are not college students. And then as applicable, if you're applying for utility reimbursement, you have to, of course, provide your utility bills. If anyone in the household is currently employed, they would have to provide pay stubs so we could verify their income. And if anyone in the household is receiving Social Security, pension, child support, or unemployment or alimony, we would need to verify that those forms of income as well. And then the documents that we would gather from the landlord on the tenant side would be the same documents that a landlord would have to apply, provide on the landlord side as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what if a individual does not have a tax return? And would it be 219 and 220 or just their most recently filed?
It's so if a tenant is applying, it's their most recently filed tax return. So if the last tax return they filed was in 2019, we would accept that one.
Okay, wonderful. And what if, again, you have an individual, let me ask you this. What is the most common mistake that you see that prevents an application from moving forward?
On the landlord side, in general, it's an individual stating on their attestation form that it was not a COVID hardship. We've had individuals who've applied because they're out for disability reasons. They're out on maternity leave. They've left employment to have surgery. Any of those things that are not, we can't define them as COVID related. So the most common mistakes on a landlord application. For a tenant application, it's just the missing documentation. It is a laundry list in a sense of documents that need to be provided. So it does get a little confusing sometimes with an applicant trying to provide what is required. So we just, on our side, we just take our time. Sometimes we have to call an applicant and just walk them through what we need. That's a little less time than trying to communicate through email sometimes. So those are the 2 most common mistakes, just missing documentation and not having a COVID hardship.
Dr. Anderson, we have a question over here.
Yes.
Quick question for Ms. Williams, excuse me. So what if a landlord has an LLC or incorporated or something to that effect? Are they still able to apply?
Yes. As long as they provide the required tax information on their W-9, they're still eligible. And as long as they have a rental license for their property, they're eligible.
Okay.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, absolutely phenomenal information. A lot of information, and certainly once you get into the application details,
Mhm.
but we're grateful that you both took the time to come and discuss with our residents of Prince George's County and our pastors what individuals can do to be able to secure assistance. It's out there. We have $25 million. We are blessed to have no caps. So whatever you need, if you've been affected by COVID and you've been in a situation where you could not pay your rent, there is help available, and there's help to help you get the money, which is also very, very important. And so where can they contact you via email if they have any questions going forward? And Ms. Yeoman, is it okay to give your email address? Or
Oh, you're muted.
There are two email addresses that I can tell you now would be the best ones for them to email. One is ERAP tenants with an S at co.pg.md.us. And I can send you this after.
Great.
So you can
Perfect.
share it with the group. And then the
Yes.
second one, that's for tenants, if they have questions. If the landlords have questions, it's ERAP landlord at co.pg.md.us.
Wonderful.
Because we have several people answering questions, so it doesn't all fall on one person, because you can't get
Awesome.
any work done if you
That's
just
right.
answering emails
Absolutely.
all day. So we kind of,
Absolutely.
divide and conquer. We
Mhm.
spread it out. And so we just take that one email inbox and we grab emails out of it. And all three of us try to answer questions as they come in.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. And for those that are listening, if you didn't get the email address and you want more information, you can email us, the Faith Based Advisory Board, at pgfbab@gmail.com. That's pgfbab@gmail.com. And we certainly can get you the information that was discussed today, as well as those emails for assistance. We'll also post on our Facebook pages after this meeting the list of assisting organizations, so that if you need assistance with your application, you'll have that contact information. But thank you so much for taking out time of your busy schedule, and we appreciate the work and the service that you give on a daily basis. You are greatly
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you for having us. And I emailed you the flyers already.
Fantastic. And we will make sure that that gets out through our Facebook page. And then we will also make sure that the pastors have it so that they can circulate it through their congregations.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Have a great
All
afternoon.
right,
You too,
bye-bye.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we hope that that was a blessing to you. What fell into my spirit, Pastor Chapman, was this: not only are some is it often the case where people get overwhelmed with the applications, but oftentimes tenants have had issues prior to COVID, and so they're kind of struggling about, well, if I was behind prior to COVID, should I apply? And know that FBAB, we do pray for you. We pray for the pastors, we pray for the congregations that are associated with it. But what I would say to anyone who might be struggling in that crossroad of decision, should I take the time to apply because I have issues with my landlord, or have had some communication issues prior to the pandemic? Pray about it. Come into agreement with your landlord. And if you need assistance in reaching out, talk to your pastor, talk to your church to see if someone can act as a mediator between you and your landlord, so that you can take advantage of this assistance, because it's there and it's so important. Oftentimes we don't take advantage of it, and we need to if it's available. What do you think, Pastor?
That's very good. As a pastor, I can also say that, unlike, and I don't want to knock any past leaders, okay, but I do appreciate our county executive and what she's done to build or bridge that gap, because pastors today can get a lot of information that can really help their congregants. And not just the congregants, their visitors, the guests, and people who are outside. I have some people who have called me and asked me questions who aren't members of my church. And so this is good to have this type of information because it really impacts and changes people's lives. And it's
Yes.
great because the information is right here. And I don't think we charged anybody $1 yet.
We didn't
So
charge a
it's
dollar.
free.
Yes,
Yes, so
yes,
it's free and
free.
it's good information to help.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes. And that, what you said is so important. We want this pastors and listeners to trickle down. So share this link. Once you see on the Facebook post the information that we're going to get out about these resources, share, and make sure it trickles down to your congregation members because
Yeah,
it can save their life. Not
that's right.
having a roof over someone's head and the fear of not having a roof is over your head can prevent you from doing anything else.
Mhm.
And so making sure that you're secure in that effort is important, and making sure that those that we are responsible for and that are under our spiritual supervision, we need to make sure that they have this so that they can
Mhm.
sleep at night and know that they're
Right.
safe. So absolutely.
And
So
I can testify just real quick
yes,
of
sir.
Miss Yeoman and her program with rental assistance and how for years we've been blessed as UCAP to be partners with her in her organization. And for years they have blessed so many people. And some of it is just that people didn't know. So I'm so grateful for your leadership and for what you do
Amen.
here and how we can get this information out and into people's hands.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to pivot now and talk. I'm going to share my screen. There is another new program that we want pastors to know about. And I think this has been circulating throughout the DMV, but we want to make sure as the FBAB that you know about the funeral assistance that has just been released through FEMA for COVID-related deaths. And so FEMA, again, is giving $7,000 for any COVID-related death to assist with funeral expenses. And so who is available to and eligible to receive the funeral assistance? They're still working through this. So we know that the information has been posted, but I think tomorrow, the FEMA is going to meet with the National Association of Funeral Directors, and they're going to lay out how to apply, when to apply, where to access the money. The actual application website will go live, I think, in the next couple of days. But you might as well get prepared, and please make sure that you get this information to your congregation members. There have been 530,000 deaths in the United States as it relates to COVID. And while we are incredibly thankful that the vaccine is here and we've been educating about the vaccine and we have vaccine sites, we are not out of the woods yet. And we know that people are still dying from COVID. Thankful for the vaccine, because one thing about the vaccine, and we're not going to turn this into a vaccine discussion, but what the vaccine does is prevent you from dying of COVID. Not from getting COVID, but from dying of COVID. So, but we know that there have been so many families that have struggled over the past year to bury their loved ones just because of unexpected deaths. And so this assistance and the Biden administration has been awesome in getting us funding that we need in our communities to address the issues that we struggle with. And so there's funeral assistance coming, $7,000 to assist with the burial expenses of any COVID-related death in the United States. To be eligible, you have to have a death certificate that indicates that the cause of death was caused by COVID. And that's something that you should track as a family member. Oftentimes, doctors will put something on there, and the primary cause of death might be heart attack or heart disease, and COVID might be a secondary cause, even though it was the cause. And so as a family member, since you know this is coming down, if something occurs, please make sure that you're tracking and understanding how the medical officer that's assigned to the case is classifying a loved one's death. The death has to have happened in the United States or the District of Columbia or a U.S. territory. The person that applies for the assistance must either be a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen national or a qualified alien who incurred the funeral expenses after January 2020 2020. And then notably, and this is very important, there is no requirement that the deceased person was a US citizen or non-citizen. So the person that's applying has to be a citizen or a non-citizen or a qualified alien who incurred the funeral expenses after January 2020, but the person that died does not have to be a citizen. FEMA has said that if you qualify for funeral assistance, you can either receive a check or through direct deposit when you apply for the aid, and exactly how, when that application link will become available and accessible is still being worked out by FEMA. And I think that this is a little bit duplicative, but a couple of the things that they will be asking for in the application, again, is the death certificate, but also the funeral expense documentation. So receipts, the funeral home contract, et cetera. And that would include and should always include your name, the deceased person's name, the amount of the funeral expense, and the dates that those expenses were incurred. And then, of course, proof of funds received from other sources. So if you have insurance and you're trying to offset the cost of the funeral with the $7,000, any other funds that you would be using, we know that there's local government assistance in all jurisdictions for funerals, that would have to be on the application too. And so thankful again for the resources that are available through and for us now that we are in the position of beginning to pivot out of the pandemic and coming into our new norm, and making sure that we indeed have the resources and the assistance that we need in the county. So I am waiting for Kenneth Lewis, and while I'm waiting for him, we have one more guest that was going to come on that would talk about church mortgages and the resources that are available out there for churches. I did want to talk a little bit about SBA resources and Payroll Protection Act resources. So it is important for everyone to know that the PPP program is still active and live. And the EIDL program through the SBA is still active and live. One of the most important changes, and I think most people know this now, but small businesses, sole proprietors, and independent contractors need to know this. Many were foreclosed from applying because the calculation for PPP was based on your net income that is identified on your 1040 Scheduled C. And a lot of small businesses experienced a loss in 2018 and 2019 and 20. And so as a result of that, they did not apply for payroll protection, because if they had a negative on line 31 of their Scheduled C, i.e. their net income was a negative, they were not eligible. The Biden administration has changed that. It is now based on your gross income. And so everyone, even if it's $5,000, at least had some gross income that they received in 19 and 20. It's just that they expensed it out based on what they needed to do to operate their business. So if you did not apply during the last round because you had a negative in your line 31 and you're a sole proprietor, independent contractor, small business, the calculation now is based on your gross. So please apply for the funding. We have all green lights to believe that the deadline, which was originally scheduled for March 31st, is going to be extended to June 30th. It was already extended by the House. We're just waiting for the Senate. And so there is more time. And so there are a lot of resources out there to assist you with this process. We certainly know that the Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce just did a wonderful, wonderful session last Friday. And so they have a number of resources available to help you with the applications. And certainly, as we know, my business, KCG Consulting Services, is there to assist you as well. But apply, apply, apply. Another biggie that I really want everyone to know about is that prior to January, if you had any conviction, you could not apply. So if you had your own business, but you were a convicted felon, you could not apply. Now, the only conviction that is excluded and excludes you and affects your eligibility is if your conviction is related to a financial crime, embezzlement, or fraud. So if there is someone who started their own business but had an old drug conviction or something that is unrelated to a financial crime, you still can apply. So returning citizens, this allows returning citizens who are in their own business, could be an Uber driver, a salon owner, a barber, a hairdresser, you can still apply. So again, there's resources out there. You can go on the SBA website, and they certainly can give you more information about local resources and free resources that are available for you as it relates to the PPP and the EIDL program. Anything you want to add about that, Pastor Chapman? Because
Yes.
you as a pastor were blessed with it. So maybe you can give a testimony about what you've experienced and encourage pastors and churches and church leaders, not only to apply, but also to give their congregation that information.
Yes. Well, first I want to thank you because it was you who have helped us. And I'm so grateful for your services and your company and how you blessed us. What happened to us, and I think you're going to find that this happened to numerous churches, is that our members, especially at the beginning of last summer and the beginning of end of last spring, our members themselves were either facing financial difficulty, or in some cases, they were afraid to give up, quote, their tithes and things. And so our
Yes.
revenue dropped. And so, as a pastor, we're still trying to provide services. We're still trying to keep our lights on and things like that. And so we needed some assistance. Some
Yes.
assistance isn't just the matter of fact that you lost revenue, but the additional cost that you may incur because now that we are closed and coming back, we have to do different things. Whereby before I might have been able to just buy a little bit of soap. Today I have to buy soap and sanitizer and things like that. So it increased the cost. So there's a lot of different, if I can say it this way, a lot of different exposures for our revenue. I think it's a bad word, but a lot of different issues that we had to face when it comes to
Yes.
finance. Let me say it that way. And so the PPP came in and really blessed us because it gave us some funding to not only offset the cost, but to help us to not just stay afloat, but to help us going until our members were able to get back to paying tithes and to get back into the ability for some of them lost jobs over the summer, was able to get jobs in the fall or things like that. And so this really helped us. It really helped us, especially also when we had to take a look at, can we pay these bills or help somebody with food? Can we pay some bills or help somebody with their rent? We really had a lot of challenges we had to look at. And so I'm so grateful for this assistance and so grateful for your team and how you
Amen.
blessed us.
God bless you. God bless you. And it's all about helping. It's all about resources. The FBAB, we are here to be an answer.
Yes.
And KCG comes alongside, and Pastor Chapman's business. We all come alongside and help to provide the resources, particularly to the faith-based community. And so as pastors, as Pastor Chapman related, we've struggled. Right? We've struggled to meet our mortgages. We've struggled to be able to be that answer to our congregation members the way that we used to by providing economic assistance and rental assistance and feeding them, and then making sure that we're tapping into some of these resources that we're giving you now is vital. But that PPP and that EIDL can really, really assist to offset the cost. And what's really important about the PPP is that it's 100% forgivable. It's 100% forgivable. The
And may I
EIDL.
I'm sorry. Let me just also say this too, to our pastors and church leaders. You're not alone. You're not on an island. Please reach out. Dr. Anderson was a blessing to us. We were able to refer other people to her, but a lot of the pastors felt like, this is just life. We have no help. But there is help for you. And we're so grateful to be able to partnership with Dr. Anderson and this faith-based advisory board and the things that the information we present to us. So pastors, You're not alone. Please reach out.
Please, 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 please. And so this is a great segue. I have invited Mr. Kenneth Lewis on the line. He is the founder and the CEO of Clearinghouse Advisory Group. And what he does well and better than anyone that I know in this country is assisting churches in pivoting from a financial crisis, particularly as it relates to their mortgage and if they're facing a foreclosure issue. So I asked him to come on the line very briefly to talk about what he is seeing in the industry now with churches having to request forbearances, negotiate forbearances, requesting deferments. And again, we're talking about pivoting out now. And a lot of churches are struggling pivoting out because they did not get the right advice about how to structure their forbearance request in the midst of the pandemic. So I know you're in California. I know you're coming on last minute for me, but Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for being with us. And please introduce yourself and your team and your business to our listeners. And then tell us a little bit about how the pastors need to think about pivoting out of this pandemic as it relates to their church mortgages.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sharon Anderson. Hope all is well with you. I'm sorry I got in here late. I had to rush, but I didn't want to disappoint you. I had a chance to hear just a little bit of comment before I just came in. And I can tell you the one thing I did hear I absolutely loved when the gentleman said, sometimes you feel like you're out on an island by yourself. And the reality is certainly knowing what you bring to the table and what happens when you show up, things change. So things change based on the fact that if you will take a moment and listen to what he said, you're not alone. You're not alone. But so many sometimes they're leading while they're bleeding. Yes. At some point in time, we know that the PPP money is going to run out. We know that the other all this other stuff is going to run out. We got to prepare to climb the hill before we get to the hill. Good. Don't wait till we get halfway up the hill and start trying to shift gears. You know the hill is coming. Yes. We know that the forbearance agreements are going to end at some point in time. Yes. So it's better to be proactive than be reactive. Because if you're proactive, you can now prepare, reach out to professionals in this season. Maybe there have been other seasons where you felt that you could do it on your own. I've got a skill set. I cannot tell you how many times I've had pastors who would say to me that I'm an anointed king of business. But the reality is you've had 2 forbearance agreements. I would have begun to question, no, you're not the king. You got to put some people around you that will help you not be in that position, because either, Sharon, it's this way. Either you're in a crisis right now as a leader, and there's so many that are, so many that are doing great. So you're either in a crisis or you're headed toward one, or you just came out of one.
That's right.
That covers everyone. The day of believing that woe unto me, I'm the only one, I can't come out of this. You know what? You can come out of it based on your relationships. Who are you talking to in this season? That's right. What are they talking about? Are they the eternal optimists, or they woe unto me? I would say change the room, change the narrative, understand that the mere fact that we're in a crisis, that we're able to pivot. We're able to pivot. The key word, can you pivot out of this? Everybody's not dying on the vine.
That's right.
There are people who are being propelled in this crisis because of their mindset and the team of people that are around them that I call the CEOs, the chief encouragement officers. Who are they talking to? Are they talking to the Sharon Andersons of the world? Are they listening to these conversations? Because what I heard in just 2 or 3 minutes, that was a whole meeting. Yeah. Please, I heard him say, please, contact someone. Well, because see, when you die, everything connected to you dies.
That's right.
I've been with pastors who's lost buildings that for 17, 18 years, they were in this incredible facility. Now that building no longer exists. Everybody's gone. Now, not only do I need to really call on God, I need to pivot into another situation. The fact that you were anointed when you did an acquisition, you didn't lose your anointing as you pivot into the next season of your life. Everyone's not going to hold on to these big buildings. They're commercial real estate deals. That's what they are. We're prepared. Listen, right now, if you can hear Simon Brothers, the largest mall owners in the world, if you can hear Carl Icahn saying, let everything collapse. When you go and see big box, all that concrete is empty. All that stuff is empty. You're seeing now shopping centers being torn down, becoming mixed-use facilities, to our point where we're talking about our projects, Sharon. Mixed-use opportunity. You're looking at one way, you refuse to look another way. But if we talk about forbearance agreements and what that means, what it looks like, we are not in a place that we could just use the same template. That's an old model. Yes, I forbear, but no, we introduce new language in this agreement that tells us if in fact that in 6 months that I'm not able to be back in that full payment mode, I'm going to be asking you to evaluate me based on my income stream, where we're at, to either put it all the way in the back end or do debt forgiveness.
That's right.
I'm a big proponent of debt forgiveness. Now, what does that mean? I want you to forgive me because you were forgiven at some point in time. The government gave you money too. Every time you process that PPP money, man, that's big money for the banks. They said, well, why do we need to loan any money out? We can just process.
That's right. That's
The
right. That's
check
why they're
cashing
able
place.
to do it so readily without a credit check.
Exactly. It's true.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So I think that if we collaborate together and understand that there's power in our group. There's power in these opportunities. I love debt forgiveness. I love debt reduction in this season. Let me tell you why. Because it gives us an opportunity to get back what they've already taken from you. If you're 16, 17 years, 10 years into a mortgage, the bank, they've already made their money. Everything above and beyond going forward is called interest. So if we do an interest-only forbearance agreement, Sharon, here's what happens. The principal is not moved. The value of the asset is moving in a different direction.
Right. It's going down.
It's going down.
Mhm.
So if it's going down, I want you to value it. And oh, by the way, they're selling off assets in record numbers. Church sell debt owned by banks are traded so actively. All you need to do is understand the markets, and anyone who's in that level of business know the trade desks are full. Why did Wells Fargo sell off so much of their debt? Why did PNC sell off so much of their debt? They knew the crisis was coming. They did not want to be guilty of hanging you. They'll sell it to a third party at a 35% discount, and they'll say, you know what, we don't care. We don't have anybody to answer to because a hedge fund just gave us $650 million to go out and buy distressed assets. Where do we look first? Well, the bank said, well, you know, we got a portfolio of this faith-based stuff, and we're not able to do anything with it. Sharon, you and I both have seen this movie.
We have.
We know the players.
Yep. So Kenneth is 159. Yep. And we got to close it too.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I wanted the pastors to, if they couldn't see you, I wanted them to hear your voice and to hear the voice of reason from a non-pastor, but an anointed man of God that was anointed to do the work of saving churches and saving vision for such a time as this. And so Brother Kenneth and I, we're actually going to be doing a conference and really digging into the details of what he discussed today. But if you heard nothing else, we're about to pivot out of the pandemic. There are a lot of pastors that entered into forbearance agreements, but you did it under pressure and you did it without advisement, and you're reaching a point where that forbearance agreement is about to expire. What do? Do you enter into another one and it's interest only and you're losing your equity and then the payment's going to become due and you still can't pay it because the church is still closed? What do? Did you even consider debt forgiveness? How do you negotiate that? What language do you use? Because we know church people have a language, the financial industry has a language. And so making sure that resources is not just, can I go out and get money? Consultants, knowledgeable people. The Bible says in the multitude of counsel, there is wisdom. So resources also includes the people that you can surround yourself with to make decisions so that the vision that God has given you can continue to survive and thrive. And this is something that Clearinghouse Advisory Group does and has been doing, and Mr. Kenneth Lewis is anointed to do this work. And so pastors, if you're listening, we didn't want to close this conversation about resources with just talking about your congregation members' issues and leaving the elephant in the room. We know that there's a number of churches that were pressed to, because churches have been closed, to make some arrangements with their financial institutions. The question is, are you doing it advisedly, and whether or not it is a negotiation that's in your best interest? If not, please make sure you reach out for assistance. And again, if you have questions, if you want Mr. Lewis's contact, tell them, Brother Kenneth, where they can reach you.
Yeah, you can reach me at area code 707-333-3015, or you can shoot me an email at Kenneth, KENNETH, at chadvisorygroup.com.
You can Google him at CH Advisory Group. He has worked with some of the most renowned pastors in this country to educate churches and pastors about finances and the best way to handle their assets and maximize the use of their assets. And so thank you for taking the time and coming in and providing this resource, because that information, that nugget that you just dropped is certainly invaluable to all of the pastors on this line. And so
thank you, Dr. Anderson.
God bless you, sir. So Pastor Chapman, thank you again. And we're coming to a close, Pastor Chapman. Any final words you have about our discussion today and just about where we're going next month with our FBAB group?
Well, I'm excited. Brother Lewis, he just got me on fire. I'm pumped up now. I was ready for him to preach a little bit, but he's so correct and he's so right. And I'm so grateful that he can be an advocate for us. Sometimes it's about getting the right information. And so I'm looking forward to his number and information being presented on our website. And I'm looking forward to get some information and getting in touch with him and to see what we can do and get some help. So I thank you, Dr. Anderson, again. I'm excited about this year. I think we started this year off on the right foot. And y'all better watch out. I hope you bought your notebook, because you're going to get a lot of information, a lot of good things that's going to help change your life. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you. And everybody have a blessed day. Again, remember, we are the Prince George's County Faith-Based Advisory Board. This is the Economic Development Subcommittee. If you have any questions, you can reach us at pgfbab@gmail.com. That is pgfbab@gmail.com. We hope and pray that this session blessed you tremendously. And thanks again for our Prince George's County representatives that came on to give us vital information. We will make sure that the contact information for the rental assistance program is available to you. Have a blessed day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Chapman.